So I have now been in the CIO job at Cisco for 7 years. And I only know about 3 CIOs that have been in their job longer than me. It's a job that's known for a high turnover rate for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. For me, the CIO job's been one of the most fun jobs I've ever had. And the reason is because it's not just about understanding technology, it's about how do you use technology in order to have a strategic advantage in the business. So it's really about how are we deploying technology in order to make our business more competitive. Now, the CIO job is so interesting that every single analyst and magazine has a point of view about who we should report to, about what's happening in our industry, about the fact that we're too slow in IT. And this is a conversation that has always sort of fascinated me while I've been in this job, that there's an ongoing discussion about how we should do our jobs and who would be better at it in the press on an ongoing basis. And so I look at that and I think, why is this conversation happening? How can I turn this conversation around in order to be that strategic advantage that our company needs? The way I sort of look at it is, first of all, we need a new model in IT. Because even when we're really good at deploying technology, we don't do a very good job of communicating that in general to our business partners. And we need to have a different model that sort of communicates in and of itself that we're fast and that we're able to be on top of what we can do strategically. We want to be viewed as that organization in the company that really is a catalyst for change, that allows our companies to take advantage of what's happening out there. And that, you know, we understand that today, every single company, I don't really like the phraseology that says, you know, every company is going to be a technology company, but I believe, down to my toes, that every company has to understand how to use technology to their advantage. And if the senior executives, including the CEO of a company, don't really understand and have a strategy about how they're taking technology to the table to be able to create a strategic advantage to their company, then they're going to be a little bit lost in the fog. Now, this isn't really a new idea. The reason why the CIO job and the technology arena is so interesting for people to write about, and everyone has an opinion about it, is because there have been multiple transitions that have happened over the last 2 decades that have made technology really come to the forefront in terms of how business models evolve. Not just, you know, new opportunities for an incremental change in your business, but things that have transformed and transitioned whole industries. And there's a couple of things that have been pretty interesting about these transitions over the last couple of years. By the way, the previous speaker asked everyone in the audience, you know, how many people worked with mainframes. Just so you know, my career has spanned every one of these transitions, and my first job was working for a mainframe company. So I've been through multiple technology transitions, and what I like to observe is what's really happening to the business in those changes. And there's a theme that started with the internet transition in the mid-90s. There were transitions that happened before that, but a theme that started with the evolution of the internet in the 90s was this idea of connecting ecosystems. And it wasn't really something that was brand new in business models, but it wasn't widespread, and it wasn't easy to take advantage of. And when we started talking about e-commerce, and that was the big killer app, in my view, for the internet in terms of business models, e-commerce, we sort of introduced this idea of ecosystems in terms of, you know, how can you use a widespread, broad, global supply chain and value chain in order to deliver value to your customer. And all of those people didn't necessarily reside in your enterprise, but they were, in fact, a part of the value proposition that your enterprise is delivering. And that concept of the ecosystem has grown and changed over the last 2 decades. And as we moved through this idea of these business processes, these digital business processes in the e-commerce era, in the last 5, 6, 7 years, social media and different forms of collaboration, the widespread use of video in terms of how people communicate, the whole social phenomena and the way we all spend a lot of time. I mean, hey, you wouldn't be playing Candy Crush if you weren't on some social media app to begin with, right? So these are phenomena that have changed this concept of this ecosystem as we've moved through time. And that concept has been really blown to new proportions with the pervasive presence of the mobile cloud. And when we're talking about delivering IT today, the foundational piece of how we're delivering IT is the mobile cloud. And that's happened over the last few years. A few years ago, we started talking about the cloud as the foundational structure for our data center, and people were looking at that and saying, that cloud, that's a buzzword. And in fact, it is a buzzword. It's kind of a summary word that we use to be able to describe this transition that's happened in our data centers, but it's really beyond that. It's about the way the infrastructure delivers the IT to both individual consumers and to enterprises. And so now we have new opportunities at hand based on that premise and that foundation as a premise. And this is really about the Internet of Everything. And we're at a new inflection point here. Just to give you a little bit of a reminder of where we're at, this is a chart that I started using about 5 years ago. And it describes the transition we took Cisco IT through to transform our data centers to be able to operate in the mobile cloud environment. And what that really means is, are we prepared to deliver IT, the IT deliverables that run our business, are we prepared to deliver them as a service, just like Salesforce.com does, as a service? Are we delivering our other services besides that sort of CRM space, which we happen to be a Salesforce.com customer, but are we delivering the other services that our business needs in that same sort of an architecture? Are we providing the kind of environment and the kind of experience that people expect? Now, I wouldn't say we get an A+ in providing the kind of experience they expect yet, but we have moved through this chart over the last several years, and we are really in between the last two chevrons on this chart. And I would submit to you that today, if you're not in the latter half of this transition, you're already behind. This is about having the mobile cloud ready and delivering your services as a service. And the reason why it's important to be paying attention and getting up to speed on this now is we are right at another inflection point. And that inflection point is about how we're able to use these technologies and expand them in a global way using the Internet of Everything technologies. And I want to share the opportunity at hand for us, and not just the pressure that's at hand for us, in a short video. So please enjoy the video. Okay, the thing that makes me really nervous about that video is it's changing faster than we can imagine. And so I want to spend time today talking about what do I think the critical technologies are for us to be paying attention to right now so that we can be ready to put our businesses in a position of competitive advantage as we move through this transition. What we need is a new model. And I was listening to the speakers earlier talk about how we need programmers and so on. We don't have time to be moving through a model that's that complex. We need a new model that is much, much more agile. And I think it's very critical. There's two elements here that are going to be very critical to talk about, and that's policy-driven architectures and the use of the community in delivering those architectures. Two kinds of communities. The community that's the ecosystem that you use to deliver value to your customers, and the community of the technologists in the world, the global community that can contribute to solving some of our biggest problems in doing this. So I'm going to talk about the intercloud fabric and that becoming the core foundation of our next moves in our data center and the way we use the intercloud fabric to do that, the data, the security concerns, and also the role of collaboration in the Internet of Everything. This is my new chart that I'm going to show probably for the next 5 years, except for that now we don't have 5 years. This is probably a 2 to 3 year chart. And Cisco IT today is sort of right in the middle of those first two chevrons. If you look at closely, you'll recognize that those match the last two chevrons in the previous chart. Where we are going next and where we are investing right now is to get to this adaptive phase. This adaptive phase is going to be critical to engage our ecosystem that we use to deliver value from our customers. And so it's highly dependent on what I'm calling the intercloud fabric. And this is closely related to the ACI architecture, the application-centric infrastructure that we're delivering to the network as we go forward. There's a lot going on about that at this show, including a Best in Show award. And so I'm going to drill into that just a little bit. But I also want to mention an announcement we're making today that I'm around this OpFlex multi-vendor innovation. This is about using the broader community to deliver this adaptive environment. And the core of this adaptive environment is this policy-based fabric control. Why is that so important? Because we don't have time to make everyone a programmer. What policy-based fabric control does is it actually puts this concept of programmability into the hands of today's IT workforce, into the hands of today's IT network administrator and other infrastructure administrators. By using policy, you effectively get the benefits of programmability, but it's easier. It still takes the same brain power that we take today when we try to solve these problems, but it makes it easier to apply and reuse that. It's not like you have to code everything or script everything. You use policy in order to drive good decision-making and a balanced, agile model in your infrastructure and in your network. And that is the foundation for how we're going to move forward into taking advantage of some advanced technologies as we move forward. I'm going to mention some of those that allow us to become much more autonomic, using truly scalable analytics and distributed processing, and really getting to this point where this is a pervasive global approach with the network at its center, of course. This is a summary value case that my team is signing up for. This is my head of infrastructure has developed these numbers. We have an opportunity to do an advanced deployment of our application-centric infrastructure technology, and we are in the process of working with that architecture and working with the engineering and development teams that put that in place. And these are the numbers that we're projecting. I'm not going to go through every detail on this slide, but these are the numbers that we're projecting to get improvements in two things, and this is important. This architecture is going to allow us to drive a certain amount of productivity that we need to get today because I'm sure, like many of you, our budgets aren't going up anytime soon. We need to be able to deploy a rapidly increasing volume of capabilities for the business, but we need to be able to do that on a relatively flat budget. And so we need to find productivity within the methodologies that we use to deliver IT. And this is going to deliver a huge chunk of change for us, not only in the way we simplify and provision the network, But the cloud, the fabric, the intercloud fabric aspect of what we're putting together with this and allowing us to use open source in order to extend the policy even beyond the network. This is going to be important for us in terms of laying the foundation to have a flexible architecture as we move forward. And that flexibility not only gives us speed, but allows us to manage risk to the business because we can deploy resources for a business need that may or may not be something we know for sure is going to work out. And if it doesn't work out, those assets become flexible and able to be moved and used for other purposes. So we're going to get speed, we're going to get flexibility, and we're going to get productivity out of this architecture. And I mentioned that there's going to be an announcement today, and there's going to be some live action at 1 o'clock today around this idea of OpFlex. This is an important element of what we're doing because this is really an industry move. This is about what the industry has to do, and using Cisco's vast community and partnerships with a number of different vendors to be able to use a community to drive some standards around some data models that are policy-based so that we can allow this to be extended beyond the data center network in terms of how you can get productivity out of this opportunity. That's foundational to be ready for the next big thing, which is that traditional model of a data center is going to look a little different over the next several years. I still think there's going to be a broad use for those large data centers that we have, and if they need to be super resilient, you've got your active data centers. But there's also a huge need to distribute processing on a global basis. Depending on what business you're in, you'll think of that a little bit differently in terms of your use cases, but we really are moving toward this vision of distributed processing where in the Internet of Everything, there's only one hop between where data is sourced and where it's used. And there's a rapid ability to do adaptive analytics in terms of what you're doing, process that data, and use it appropriately on a distributed basis. And that concept is not only going to apply to your business model, but it's going to apply to the way we run IT and the way our networks adapt as we move forward in order to handle whatever load or whatever is happening in that particular environment where you're processing workloads. Of course, that kind of processing is really all about the data. And we hear a lot today about quote-unquote big data. And that is, again, one of those wrappers that we like to use so we can talk about a big concept. But what's really important about the data, people are concerned about volume. And volume is a concern because the number of places that you're going to get data from with the ability to miniaturize sensors and to use them broadly in many, many different use cases, whether it's something like oil and gas where you have a real geological spread of where you're picking up data, or even in communications, which is a naturally distributed service, or in retail, where we're gathering lots of different kinds of data on the fly. There's lots of different elements of the acquisition, the storage, the analytics, and the distribution of data in volume that we have to address. And there's also a difference around how we need to move that data faster to meet the expectations of our business and get insights faster. Why is faster so important? It's because speed creates competitive advantage for our businesses. And to do that on a global basis is very critical. But the most interesting aspect of the data is the variety of the data that we're picking up today. It's not just the good old-fashioned structured data that we get out of our ERP systems, but it's also a lot of unstructured data. Data from social media, data from video. I like to think about the data of two people communicating as part of that data landscape. The variety of the data that we're bringing in to bring to bear really competitive insights to our business is very, very critical. And how we handle that is a critical area for innovation as we move into this era. And of course, that starts to tell you we've got an inner cloud happening, we've got a lot of data from a lot of different sources, and we're moving it very fast. The need to address security today in a different fashion is multidimensional. There's no perimeter. It's a multi-dimensional problem that we have to solve. And the structure that Cisco's using to address this is actually a three-part structure. And it begins with gaining visibility from the entire stack of technologies that we're using to be able to deliver IT. But this also, solving this issue is also a community-based solution. And Cisco is bringing to bear the power of the community and putting structures in place to allow the broader business community to share community concerns and learnings so that we can be operating on par with the hacker community. And this is something that we've recently announced and we're doing. But our products are bringing to bear the ability to do these behavior analysis of what is happening and bring to bear the different types of data, do analysis, and then take action through policy-based architectures. So if you think about security, it's not only a challenge in the Internet of Everything, it's also the perfect use case for applying the technologies associated with the Internet of Everything. And then finally, I think it's important to recognize that the technology is great, but you know, the technology hopefully isn't going to run the universe without us. And it's my view, and I say this often, is that people are your only sustainable competitive advantage. If nothing else, they're the ones that know how to use the technology. But it's really important to understand how the collaboration and communication technologies that you're deploying come together with the workloads that people are using to do their jobs every day, the data, the communications technologies, and so on. And that those people they come in different forms, and they use different types of devices to connect into the system to do their work. So everything from almost every worker being able to use a mobile device to connect into work, to the boardroom and how a board interacts and uses collaboration technology, and everything in between in terms of the types of meetings and connections we have to deliver our business. So collaboration is a key portion of this. Now, how does IT have to act differently? I want to address a specific area here that I think is really important. The SaaS companies use something, people call it different things, continuous integration, DevOps model, those types of things. But the IT organization today has to change the model of how we deliver services. And we have to have a continuous delivery process in terms of how we deliver services to the business. And this has some specific elements to it in terms of how, you know, a number of things, but the two I'll point out is we need client involvement early in the process when we're designing the process, and not through the traditional BRD, or business requirements hell, as we call it. We need to have a different model of active involvement of the clients early as we design our solutions. And then we have to have an ability to do a tremendous amount of automated testing so that we're balancing risk with what we do, and then deliver incremental change that the clients are involved in a rapid feedback loop so that we can then move to scale. But it's beyond the delivery process. This is a mindset that we need to change in terms of the way, especially large enterprises, deliver IT. We need to be having this kind of innovation circles that draw in people that aren't in IT. We need to have small teams that can rapidly design and prototype and deliver and get the right kind of appropriate risk-taking in our mindset in terms of how we move our businesses forward. And we need to get fast results. And this is not just a process, but a mindset that we need to change in IT today. Now, I want to use one example just to make this practical to everybody. And this is an area that we're starting on. We've done some great foundational work in our supply chain area. But we're going to use our supply chain as a perfect practical example of how we're going to apply the Internet of Everything technologies in our world at Cisco. This is a picture of our supply chain and the way it works today. And, you know, you see these little trucks on here. The traditional supply chain approach is completely by design and has worked for many, many years in terms of making sure the information travels very specifically with your physical product. And today, a lot of products aren't even physical. So this is a little bit of a challenge, and it's very linear in nature, and to some extent limited to be a linear in nature based on the traditional technologies that we use to run this business, the ERP-type technologies. Now, I don't think they're going away anytime soon, and the principles of ERP are critical, but we have an opportunity to take this ecosystem and apply a different approach to it relative to how we use these technologies. It's important because there are huge limitations to stay productive and competitive and have the speed and flexibility that we need in our supply chain today. Now, we have opportunities also to use the Internet of Things technology, sensors. There's a number of elements in this supply chain that we can apply from a sensor standpoint to pick up data from different places and simultaneously bring those together, do analytics, and make faster and better decisions. What does it look like? These are the elements of an Internet of Everything structure. There's that core infrastructure foundation that I talked about that we can make flexible. There's a data ecosystem. It's not just us. It's our full value chain bringing data to the party and bringing it together not in a linear fashion, but in a way that we can make good competitive decisions for the business. So the value that comes from that is real-time visibility. What's really happening and what are our customers really experiencing based on what's happening in our supply chain? Or in fact, what if we're having a quality issue and we have multiple nodes in the supply chain? We don't get that quality issue really clear until it doesn't look like as big a problem as it is until it's actually out there at the customer. Those kinds of things cost hundreds of millions of dollars. And I can tell you that from personal experience. Having that data earlier and together, you can save hundreds of millions of dollars. The data management and the way that we are going to bring that together is a critical piece of how we move forward. And it will create an opportunity to do collaboration in a different way with our supply chain and our value partners. What do we need in IT? We need a new model. We need an agile, policy-driven services model delivered from a community. And what is that going to give us? It's going to give us the right information to the right people at the right time for better decision-making. And that is going to give our companies a competitive advantage. That's what we're going to do with the Internet of Everything. Thank you.